Greetings and hello, my name is Adrian Fleischer. I'll be presenting on the 5 health-related components of fitness. This content would fit very squarely into Kinesiology 335, Personal Wellness and Fitness as offered at Illinois College. So with that, I'd like to get started and jump into some expectations. I didn't believe that this was going to be a PowerPoint showcase, and I really didn't believe that that was something we were interested in. So there won't be things cartwheeling on and off of the screen per se. There will be some functionality, but I didn't think that was a high priority for a presentation such as this. There really wasn't a book I could draw from, so I pulled content from different sources, the American College of Sports Medicine, as well as the National Strength and Conditioning Association, and I think I'm pretty close to the mark to have it align with Kinesiology 335. This presentation that you're seeing online will be 15 minutes in length, whereas the classroom version will be 45 minutes. So while there may be some references to homework assignments and homework examples, I will not be getting fully involved and fully engaged in describing the homework here. I'll do that in the classroom environment. So with that, let's get going. The overview of this presentation, we'll start with the domains of wellness, and then as it relates, one of the domains of wellness is a person's physical well-being or physical fitness, and we'll talk about these 5 health-related components of fitness, and that's where we'll spend most of our time with this presentation. And then we'll talk about it relative to different populations, broad-based populations within society. Homework examples for a lecture like this, I would use a post and response for 5 points, a written assignment for 10 points, and a 10-point quiz. And I would use these as kind of low barrier assignments to not only provide the opportunity to reinforce learning deliverables, but also to see if I hit the mark in terms of what I'm doing in my teaching. So with that, let's go ahead and jump in and get going with this presentation. When we look at the primary domains of wellness, we have physical fitness, psychological, emotional, spiritual, financial wellness. And as a practitioner, whether you're a strength and conditioning coach, a personal trainer, or perhaps a physical therapist, we spend a lot of time here in physical fitness. And it's kind of where we spend our time working with our clients or our athletes. But we know that there's a relationship, right? We know there's a relationship between psychological, emotional, social, and how it's influenced by physical fitness. So to that end, we'll be spending a lot of our time today in this presentation and the in-person presentation talking about physical fitness, but it's undeniable the relationship that is present between physical fitness as well as psychological, emotional, and social well-being. I could also make a pretty strong argument for spiritual and financial well-being, but I'm just framing this up in the context of psychological, emotional, and social. So if we look at physical fitness and a person's physical fitness, and we take a look at what makes up that broad-based domain of physical fitness, it becomes these 5 components. You have cardiovascular endurance, muscle strength, muscle endurance, flexibility, and body composition. A visual representation of this would be this, where we have in the middle is physical fitness, and that's our main domain. And then you have these components that are around physical fitness. And it's not to say that each one is mutually exclusive from one another. They all have an influence on each other as well as the domain of one's level of physical fitness. At this point in the classroom, I'll end up taking a moment to get into a jigsaw activity and talk about the 5 components of physical fitness, simply because I want to take a moment before we get into the formal definitions of these 5 components. I want the students to be able to kind of build a foundation themselves and use this jigsaw activity to be able to take a moment and come up with working definitions for each one of these in their own group, and then be able to do so, not only provide the definition, but come up with a real world example, come up with perhaps an evaluation or measurement. So if we take a moment here, I'm going to hit pause and jump out to the prompt that I'll use in the class. I'm working under the presumption that we'll have probably about 20 people, give or take, maybe 25 in the class. So it'll be a group of maybe 4 or 5 people working together. Each group will have one of these sheets. One will be red, one will be orange, yellow, green, blue. And what I'm looking for is each group to come up with a definition of the component in their own words, come up with a real world example to support what it is, and then a way you might evaluate or measure this component. So you have cardiovascular. We scroll down. We now have in the orange muscular strength or muscle strength. In here we have muscle endurance, yellow, and then green we have flexibility, and blue we have body composition. And just in the class itself, we're going to take 2 minutes to 5 minutes to go ahead and go through this. Right now, you can just pause me if you want and jot down some notes. But that's what I'm looking to do to be able to connect the dots early on and support some learning outcomes later. Lastly, while the students are working on this jigsaw activity, I would like for them to do so in the context of just kind of framing these 5 main areas, these 5 components, into 3 different categories in the population: the elderly, the general population, and athletes. So to that end, just kind of frame it up and use that as your prism or lens that you're looking through when you look at each one of these. When we get into these components of fitness, the first one up, we have cardiovascular fitness. Now, cardiovascular fitness is how well the heart, the lungs, and the blood vessels deliver oxygen to the working muscles. Get myself out of the way here. During physical activity. With cardiovascular fitness, there's different benefits associated with cardiovascular fitness, which includes the reduced likelihood of numerous hypokinetic illnesses. These can be different cardiac conditions or respiratory conditions. When we evaluate cardiovascular fitness, we can do so through a number of different tests in a clinical environment. So for example, we could do a stress test, treadmill, or on a bike. We can even do a chemical stress test. We could do any number of different field tests. A great example of that might be like a Rockport Fitness walking test. So we use these different tests to evaluate a person's level of cardiovascular fitness. Next up is muscle strength. This muscle strength is the ability of a muscle or muscle group to exert maximum force against resistance. We have many different benefits associated with increased muscle strength, including like stronger bones. We also have the ability to complete activities of daily living better. And just as a quirky sidebar, oftentimes when you look at studies and research, when we evaluate a person's readiness for completing a muscle strength assessment, you'll see the use of a hand grip dynamometer. And there's a correlation between performance on hand grip dynamometer and the readiness to perform a laboratory assessment. Now, it's not to say that this person to the right on the screen can use a hand grip dynamometer over and over and over again and increase their squat strength. That's not what I'm inferring. What I'm saying is when you're going through and you're evaluating populations of people to do testing, you can use a hand grip dynamometer as a proxy for overall strength to be able to evaluate their readiness to do exercise testing. But there's no doubt, as we note here, specific movement patterns. If you want to be stronger in the squat, you have to squat. If you want to be able to bench more weight, you better start practicing bench press. When we look at muscle endurance is the ability of a muscle or group of muscles to repeatedly exert force against resistance or sustain a contraction for an extended period. Now notice the nuance here between muscle endurance and muscle strength. This is for repetition or sustained period. Same benefits. Talk about the reduction of injury, stronger bones, the ability to complete ADLs better. And these are often done through field tests that you'll see, like a push-up test for to exhaustion, sit-ups for time, or planks as well. For flexibility. Flexibility is the ability of a joint or multiple joints to be able to move through a normal range of motion. The benefits that you have from having good flexibility are better posture, better efficiency of movement, you have a reduction in the imbalances between antagonistic muscle groups, and you have a reduced risk of injury. The tests that are often administered, the assessments that are often administered, are very specific to regions of the body. Like a sit and reach test is going to be low back and hamstring, whereas a zipper test where you reach one hand over and one hand above and you're measuring the distance between the fingertips, that's going to be shoulders. So the assessments that you often see in physical fitness testing are very specific to a region of the body. Body composition itself, it's the proportion of fat and fat-free mass in the body, and it's often described as a two-compartment model. When we look at the benefits of being fitter per se or having lower body fat, you have the reduction in risk of different diseases, including type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and you also have just overall increased functional capacity. The way we evaluate body composition is done through, in a more clinical environment, say through skin fold measurements, or perhaps we do hydrostatic weighing. In a fitness-related environment, or perhaps where you're actually evaluating a number of different people wholesale at a large amount of people in a short amount of time, you might use bioelectrical impedance. Like this gentleman to the right here is standing on an in-body type scale where it just evaluates weight as well as body composition in one evaluation. With a sidebar to this is the simple fact that I spend a lot of time working in a fitness-based or medically based environment where I do fitness. And I can tell you the B and C that you see for body composition for physical fitness kind of changes as people age. They're more about balance and coordination. And sure, we want the ability to be able to stay in good balance and have good coordination while standing, but while also moving around. And I can tell you this shifts because you have people who are more worried about a slip and trip and broken hip than they are about their body composition. Just a sidebar I wanted to point out with a different population there. So when we look at these 5 components of wellness, if we get back to this, you had cardiovascular endurance, you had muscle strength, muscle endurance, flexibility, and body composition. These all work together to help us in becoming more physically fit. If we were to look at this across the population, you'd have to the left of the bell curve, you'd have the elderly. The general population will comprise roughly about 68% of the people. And then you have athletes to the right. And people who play sports professionally are several standard deviations to the right. But just realize that your population can be subdivided into your general people that come in, perhaps your sick, ill, elderly, recently had a hip replacement or have gone through cardiac rehab, and folks who are athletic over here to the right. And where this becomes important is this. When we look at these different domains, let me get myself up and out of the way here. These different components, excuse me. And these different components, you'll focus on balance and coordination for one will be the priority, whereas the general population, you might focus on cardiovascular as number 1 priority. When you look at athletes, you might focus on muscular strength. Now, I understand that if we have a bunch of distance runners and we're talking about maybe working with a bunch of distance runners, cardiovascular will be absolutely a priority, but this is a broad-based generality. Let's go ahead and take another look at this. If we go ahead and give another representation of this, you can see how the bubbles change based on our rank order in terms of priority. For the elderly, it's balance and coordination. We're not even talking body composition. When we talk about the general population, usually they're sent with a doctor's order in hand to go work out. Cardiovascular fitness is key, though we have seen more of a push in the muscular strength over the years, which is great. But it's usually cardiovascular fitness, and they have to lose a little bit of weight. Their body composition needs to change. When we get over to the athletic population, muscle strength is a priority, and flexibility, specifically dynamic flexibility. So it really becomes this, like how do we program this out? And we look at it maybe from a pie chart standpoint, we're going to spend 30% of our time in a functional area in a workout session. With our elderly, it might be balance and coordination. With our general population people, we're trying to take them to anaerobic threshold and hold them there maybe 30% of the time. We're going to focus on keeping them there in their workouts, and that's what we're going to focus on for 30% of the strategy that we're using for them in their workout programs. Whereas when we're talking athletes, we might focus 30% of our time on muscular strength. If they're an endurance athlete, that would certainly change. So it kind of depends on the person that's standing in front of you. So it depends on what you're trying to accomplish, and the needs drive the programming. So if we review this, we're looking at the domains of wellness. We went over the 5 health-related components of fitness, and we gave examples to relative groups, and I gave a little insight to the different homework I like to provide. So to that end, guys, I'm going to sign off here, and I look forward to seeing you in class. Thank you.